You're right about one thing. I'm not the first person you've destroyed. Nadia's voice cut through the private dining room at Luminaire with a calmness that made the air vibrate with tension. Genevieve Ashford leaned forward, diamonds catching the soft light, her perfectly manicured finger pointing across the table like a loaded weapon. Listen to me very carefully. I am offering you $50,000. Cash. Right now. All you have to do is destroy those recordings, sign this non-disclosure agreement, and walk away. Your grandmother gets her treatment. You get your life back. Everyone wins. The leather folder sat between them on the white tablecloth, a certified check visible through the transparent window. Salvation purchased for the price of silence. Nadia looked directly into those cold gray eyes, unflinching. But I am the last. What did you just say to me? Genevieve's voice rose, that familiar edge of rage building beneath the polished exterior. The door to the private dining room opened. Alexis Chen entered first, her heels clicking against marble with the rhythm of inevitability. Behind her came FBI Special Agent Marcus Williams, his badge catching the light. 3 federal investigators followed, carrying boxes of documentation. Then James Morrison with a photographer, cameras already flashing. Genevieve's face drained of color like water from a broken glass. Genevieve Ashford, you are under investigation for charitable fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to obstruct federal proceedings, and as of 30 seconds ago, witness tampering. That brings our total to 17 distinct federal violations. Agent Williams's voice carried the flat authority of someone who had delivered this speech 100 times before, but never to someone who believed so completely in their own untouchability. This is absurd. I was simply trying to help a former employee in crisis. There is no crime in generosity. Genevieve's voice cracked on the last word, the foundation of her confidence already crumbling. There is when it's offered as payment for destroying evidence in a federal investigation. Alexis Chen's smile carried years of pent-up vindication. The recordings Miss Collins provided were already submitted to federal authorities 48 hours ago. This meeting was orchestrated specifically to document your witness tampering. Wait. Hold on. Let me take you back to where this all started, because what you just witnessed was the moment a billionaire's empire came crashing down. But the woman who brought it all crumbling to the ground, the woman sitting calmly across from Genevieve Ashford as federal agents moved in for the arrest, that woman was invisible just 3 weeks earlier. My name is Mr. Lawson, and I'm about to tell you a story that will remind you why you should never, and I mean never, underestimate the quiet ones. Before we get into it, let me ask you something. Have you ever been humiliated by someone who thought they were better than you? Ever felt invisible while someone with power tried to break your spirit in front of a crowd? Ever watched someone wealthy and connected get away with things that would put ordinary people in prison for life? If you've ever felt powerless while the powerful played by different rules, this story is for you. What happened at the Belmont Yacht Club that night would expose a billion-dollar empire built on lies, fraud, and systematic destruction of anyone who dared to speak truth to power. But here's what nobody in that room knew, not the 75 witnesses, not the billionaire's wife, not even the manager who fired her. That simple waitress they were all looking down on had a secret that would bring the most powerful woman in the city to her knees. And it all started with one word. No. Now before I tell you how a server making $12 an hour outsmarted a billionaire and the FBI to take down one of the biggest fraud operations in the country, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is about justice, intelligence, and the kind of courage that changes everything. This is the content that needs to be shared, the stories that remind us why we fight back. Let me take you back to 3 weeks before that FBI raid, to a humid Friday evening at the Belmont Yacht Club, where Nadia Collins was working her second double shift of the week, trying to keep her grandmother alive one tip at a time. The chandelier light caught the diamonds at Genevieve Ashford's throat like captured stars as her voice sliced through the hushed elegance of the Belmont Yacht Club's private dining terrace. I want her gone before dessert is served. 75 pairs of eyes turned from their lobster thermidor to witness the spectacle unfolding at table 1, where the billionaire's wife sat rigid as royalty, her finger aimed like a weapon at the young black woman standing frozen with a silver coffee pot trembling in her hands. Nadia Collins felt the weight of those stares pressing against her skin like thumbs against bruises. The accident had been choreographed with precision. Genevieve's deliberate elbow knocking the cream pitcher into her own lap, the theatrical gasp, the practiced outrage. All of it theater, staged for an audience that understood their role was to watch, judge, and reinforce the natural order of their insulated world. This is the third time this month your staff has proven incompetent. Genevieve continued, addressing Roger Whitmore, the club's general manager, who materialized beside their table with the anxious energy of a man who knew which side his artisanal bread was buttered on. I've been patient. I've been gracious. But clearly, some people are simply incapable of meeting Belmont standards. The coded language hung in the salt-tinged air, as transparent as the crystal glasses catching the sunset over the harbor. Some people. Everyone knew exactly who she meant. Nadia's fingers tightened on the coffee pot's handle. The ache in her lower back from a double shift blended with a deeper, more familiar pain. The exhaustion of being seen as less than human by people who wouldn't survive a day in her world. But she needed this job. Needed it with the desperation of someone watching the clock count down to catastrophe. Mrs. Ashford, I sincerely apologize. Whitmore began, his voice oozing the particular brand of obsequiousness reserved for members whose annual dues exceeded his salary. I don't want your apologies, Roger. Genevieve's smile was sharp as broken glass. I want to see this resolved. Immediately. Publicly. She gestured to the assembled diners, many already recording on phones discreetly angled to capture the degradation. Excellence requires accountability. Perhaps a formal apology would remind your staff of the privilege it is to serve here. The terrace held its collective breath, waiting to see if the young woman would break. No. The word emerged from Nadia's throat like a shard of ice, small but impossibly sharp in the suffocating silence. She set the coffee pot down with deliberate care on the nearest serving station, her hand steadier than her racing heart. I won't apologize for something that wasn't my fault. Genevieve's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose in theatrical shock, as if she'd witnessed a piece of furniture develop opinions. The audience leaned forward, anticipation crackling through the humid evening air. This was dinner theater at its most vicious. The sport of watching someone be destroyed in real time. Excuse me? Genevieve's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the terrace. Did you just refuse a direct request from a founding member of this club? Roger Whitmore's face cycled through shades of crimson as he calculated the social mathematics of the situation. On one side, a server he could replace within hours. On the other, Genevieve Ashford. Wife to tech billionaire Julian Ashford, chairwoman of half the charity boards in the city, and the woman who could end his career with a single phone call to the board of directors. The equation wasn't difficult. Collins, my office. Now. His voice carried the particular cruelty of a man reasserting dominance to impress those with power over him. Mrs. Ashford, I assure you this behavior is completely unacceptable and will be addressed with immediate disciplinary action. But Nadia had stopped listening to men like Roger Whitmore years ago. She'd learned that dignity wasn't something granted by others. It was something you carried inside yourself, unbreakable as bone. Her grandmother Lorraine had taught her that, back when Nadia was small enough to hide behind her skirts but already old enough to understand the particular dangers that came with being black and female in spaces where wealth bought the illusion of righteousness. I'll save you the trouble, Mr. Whitmore. Nadia untied her service apron with movements that felt like unlocking chains. I quit. The words tasted like freedom and terror in equal measure. The Belmont Yacht Club paid double what she could earn anywhere else, and the tips from a single weekend could cover a month's worth of her grandmother's medication. Lorraine's dialysis treatments ran $450 per session, 3 times weekly, and Medicare only covered so much. The math was brutal and unforgiving. But some prices were too high to pay, even for survival. Genevieve's triumph melted into something uglier. The rage of someone denied the complete submission they'd orchestrated. "You arrogant little." She stood, her chair scraping against terrace stone. "You think you can just walk away from me? From the consequences of your incompetence?" She turned to address the room with the projection of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Let this be a lesson to everyone who thinks they can disrespect their betters without consequences. I will personally ensure that no establishment in this city ever employs you again. You'll be lucky to find work scrubbing toilets when I'm finished." The threat hung in the air like poison gas, seeping into every corner of the terrace. Other staff members froze mid-service, their faces pale with vicarious fear. They'd all heard stories of Genevieve Ashford's vindictiveness. Careers ended, reputations destroyed, lives crushed under the weight of her influence. Nadia looked directly into Genevieve Ashford's cold gray eyes and saw something the billionaire's wife had completely missed. Not defeat, but calculation. Not submission, but strategy building beneath the surface like pressure before an earthquake. "We'll see," Nadia said quietly, her voice carrying a promise that made several diners pause mid-bite, sensing something they couldn't quite name. She walked through the terrace with her spine straight, heading toward the employee exit while whispers followed like debris in a wake. Behind her, she left a room full of people convinced they'd witnessed a destruction. None of them realized they'd actually watched the opening move in a game Genevieve Ashford didn't know she'd entered. 6 hours before that confrontation, Nadia had woken in the apartment she shared with her grandmother on the 4th floor of a walk-up in a neighborhood that real estate developers called emerging and residents called home. The alarm screamed at 4:30 in the morning, pulling her from dreams she could never quite remember but always left her feeling like she'd been running. The floor was cold against her feet as she moved through the darkness, muscle memory guiding her to the small kitchen where she started the coffee maker that had belonged to her mother. In the other room, she could hear the steady rhythm of Lorraine's breathing, punctuated by the occasional cough that made Nadia's chest tighten with worry. Her grandmother's dialysis port was covered by the sleeve of a cardigan she'd knit herself 30 years ago, back when her hands were steady and her kidneys still functioned. Nadia pulled on her Georgetown hoodie, the fabric worn soft from years of wear, the logo faded but still visible. She'd been so proud the day she got her acceptance letter. Full scholarship to the School of Foreign Service, specializing in international relations and financial crimes investigation. Her parents had cried. Lorraine had cooked a feast that fed the whole building. The future had stretched before her like an open road, full of possibility and promise. That was before the car accident on I-95. Before the drunk driver crossed the median. Before her parents' future became a past tense tragedy, and Nadia's open road became a detour through survival. "Baby girl, you don't need to check on me every morning." Lorraine's voice came from the doorway, soft but firm. "I'm not going anywhere." Nadia turned to see her grandmother, frail in her pink bathrobe, the weight loss from treatment visible in the way the fabric hung loose on her frame. But her eyes still held fire. That particular brand of strength that came from surviving 73 years of a world that tried to break black women in 1,000 different ways. "I know, Grandma. I just like seeing your face before my shift." Nadia crossed the small space and kissed her grandmother's forehead. "You working another double?" Lorraine's disapproval was gentle but present. "Club's busy this time of year. Summer people are back, and they tip well." Nadia poured coffee into 2 mugs, handing one to her grandmother. "Bills don't pay themselves. Bills also don't require you to work yourself to death." Lorraine settled into her recliner, the same one she'd had since Nadia was a child. "Your mama didn't raise you to be a workhorse for rich people who don't appreciate you. She raised me to take care of family. Nadia sat on the arm of the recliner. And that's what I'm doing. By letting them treat you like you're less than. Lorraine's voice carried an edge now. I see how you come home, baby. I see it in your eyes. The way they look through you like you're furniture. It's temporary, Grandma. Just until we get caught up on the medical bills. Then I'll figure out next steps. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. They both knew there was no getting caught up. Dialysis was ongoing. The bills multiplied faster than tips could cover them. This wasn't temporary. This was the new permanent, until something changed or someone died. Lorraine reached up and took Nadia's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Your grandfather used to tell me that dignity can't be bought or sold. No matter how much they pay you, if you have to bow to keep the job, the price is too high. I know. Nadia squeezed back. I remember. She didn't say the rest. Didn't say that dignity was a luxury she couldn't afford when machines kept her grandmother alive at $450 per session. Didn't say that pride made a poor substitute for medical care. Didn't say that she swallowed her self-respect 3 times a week so Lorraine could live. Some things were better left unspoken. The Belmont Yacht Club sat on the waterfront like a monument to inherited wealth, its white columns and manicured lawns screaming old money with the subtlety of a foghorn. Nadia arrived through the service entrance at 11:45, 15 minutes early as always, changing into her uniform in the staff locker room that smelled of bleach and quiet desperation. Maria Santos was already there, adjusting her own uniform in the mirror. Nadia, girl, you got table 1 tonight. Maria's voice carried warning. Mrs. Ashford requested our section specifically. Nadia's stomach dropped. Genevieve Ashford was notorious among the staff. Demanding, cruel, and generous with complaints but stingy with tips. She'd gotten 2 servers fired in the past year for infractions as minor as bringing the wrong brand of sparkling water. Did she request me specifically? Nadia asked, already knowing the answer. Maria's expression said everything. Look, just keep your head down, smile, and don't give her any reason. You know how she is. I know. Nadia tied her apron, checking her reflection. The uniform made everyone look the same. Black slacks, white button-down, black vest. Invisible. Interchangeable. That was the point. They weren't supposed to be people. They were supposed to be functions. Bring food, clear plates, fade into the background until needed again. Roger Whitmore appeared in the doorway, his thin frame radiating the nervous energy that defined his entire existence. Collins, Santos, front of house in 5. We have a full book tonight, and I expect perfection. The Ashfords are celebrating their anniversary, and I don't need to remind you how important they are to this establishment. He didn't need to remind them. They all knew. Julian Ashford's tech company had made him a billionaire 3 times over. His wife Genevieve controlled the social circuit, deciding who was in and who was out with the capriciousness of a Roman empress. Crossing them meant professional suicide, and Whitmore knew it. The evening started smoothly enough. Nadia moved through her section with practiced efficiency, taking orders, delivering drinks, reading the subtle cues that separated good service from great. She'd learned to anticipate needs before they were spoken, to be present but not intrusive, to smile with her whole face even when her feet screamed and her back ached. Table 1 sat on the terrace overlooking the harbor, the best view in the house, permanently reserved for members of sufficient status. Genevieve held court there with 6 other women, all dressed in designer labels that cost more than Nadia's annual income. They laughed with the particular pitch of people who'd never worried about money, never chosen between medication and groceries, never felt the weight of survival pressing down on their shoulders. I'll have the Arctic char, but tell the chef to hold the capers. I can't stand capers. I don't know why he insists on putting them on everything. Genevieve didn't look at Nadia as she spoke, her eyes on her phone. And bring me the Sancerre, the 2014, not that dreadful 2015 they tried to serve me last time. Of course, Mrs. Ashford. Nadia scribbled notes, taking orders from the rest of the table. The kitchen was chaos, as it always was on Friday nights. Nadia put in her orders and grabbed the wine, checking the vintage twice before bringing it to the table. She showed Genevieve the label, waited for the dismissive nod, poured a taste, waited for approval that came without eye contact or acknowledgement. 2 hours into service, Nadia was refilling water glasses when it happened. Genevieve reached for her wine at the exact moment Nadia approached with the cream pitcher for coffee service. Their movements intersected. Genevieve's elbow connected with Nadia's forearm with enough force to send the pitcher flying. Cream splashed across Genevieve's lap, soaking into her dress. But Nadia had seen the calculation in Genevieve's eyes a half-second before impact. Had watched the deliberate timing, the performance of surprise, the theatrical gasp that followed. "Oh my God!" Genevieve shrieked, pushing back from the table. "Look what you've done. This is a Chanel dress. $20,000, ruined because you can't manage basic competence. Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry." Nadia grabbed napkins, offering them with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. "Let me. Don't touch me." Genevieve slapped the napkins away. "You've done enough damage." Genevieve's voice carried clearly in the acoustically designed space, meant to allow conversation without shouting but also meant to let important people be overheard. People don't donate because they've researched your impact metrics. They donate because they want access to your social circle. The women around her laughed with the knowing cruelty of people who'd built lives on similar deceptions. "My accountant keeps asking about documentation for expenses. As if I need to justify every receipt when I'm doing charitable work." One of the companions complained, her tone suggesting this was the height of unreasonableness. "Fire him," Genevieve said dismissively. "Find someone who understands that people like us operate on a different level. The rules that apply to ordinary people are suggestions for those with real influence." Nadia's hand remained steady on her water glass, but her pulse raced with the implications. Genevieve Ashford had just confessed to charity fraud in a public restaurant, recorded on a device that would preserve every incriminating word. But the nuclear revelation was still to come. Speaking of influence. Genevieve lowered her voice in a way that paradoxically made her words carry further. "Julian's congressional problem is resolving itself nicely. Apparently, campaign contributions can be remarkably effective at changing committee assignments. The senator leading the investigation will find himself suddenly interested in other matters after we redirect certain funds through the appropriate channels." The casual admission of bribing federal officials hung in the air like expensive perfume. Overwhelming, obvious, and somehow completely ignored by everyone present except the woman recording every word. The conversation continued for 90 minutes. Each revelation more damaging than the last. By the time Genevieve and her companions swept out of Luminaire in a cloud of expensive perfume and casual corruption, Nadia had accumulated enough evidence to dismantle an empire. She paid her bill, left a generous tip for the server who'd treated her with respect, and walked out into the afternoon sun feeling like she'd just loaded a weapon. Now she needed someone who knew how to fire it. The law offices of Chen and Associates occupied a modest suite in a building that would never make architectural magazines, serving clients who needed justice more than they needed prestige. Nadia climbed 3 flights of stairs, her new suit already feeling like armor, and pushed through the frosted glass door. A young receptionist looked up with a smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Alexis Chen." "I don't have an appointment, but James Morrison from the Chronicle said she'd want to hear what I have to say." The receptionist's expression shifted to curiosity. "Let me check if she's available. Can I tell her what this is regarding?" The Ashford Foundation. 2 words that opened doors faster than any formal introduction. Within 5 minutes, Nadia was sitting across a desk from Alexis Chen, a woman in her early 40s whose professional demeanor barely concealed the intensity burning beneath. She studied Nadia with the assessment of someone trained to read people, to separate truth from performance. James said you might have evidence regarding Genevieve Ashford's foundation. Alexis's voice was careful, measured. Before we go any further, I need to understand what we're talking about and what you're hoping to accomplish. The terrace had gone silent. 75 people watching, waiting to see how this would play out. Phones emerged from purses and pockets, angling for the best view. This was entertainment. This was the blood sport of watching someone beneath you get destroyed for the crime of existing in your space. Roger Whitmore appeared like he'd been summoned by telepathy, his face already arranged in apologetic horror. Mrs. Ashford, I cannot begin to express how sorry I am. I don't want your apologies, Roger. I want accountability. Genevieve stood, cream dripping from her dress onto the terrace stone. This girl has been incompetent all night. Wrong wine, slow service, and now this. She gestured to her ruined dress. I want a formal, public apology. I want her on her knees, acknowledging her failure to meet basic standards. The demand hung in the air like a noose waiting to tighten. Nadia felt the weight of every eye, every camera, every judgment pressing down on her. This was the moment. Bow or break. Survive or stand. In her mind, she heard Lorraine's voice. Dignity can't be bought or sold. In her heart, she felt the weight of medical bills, the rhythm of dialysis machines, the mathematics of survival that said bow, apologize, keep the job, keep grandma alive. In her gut, she felt something else. A line that couldn't be crossed. A price too high to pay. No. The word came out quiet but absolute. Genevieve blinked, confused. What did you say? I said no, Mrs. Ashford. Nadia's voice grew stronger with each word. I will not kneel down and apologize for something I didn't do. You knocked that picture out of my hand deliberately. Everyone here saw it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones angled for better shots. This wasn't the script. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. How dare you? Genevieve's voice rose to a shriek that made the chandeliers tremble. Do you know who I am? My husband owns half this city. One phone call from me and you'll never work again. Then I guess you'd better make that call. Nadia untied her apron, her hands steady despite the terror flooding her system. Because I won't apologize for your lies. Roger Whitmore's voice cut through the chaos. Collins, you're suspended immediately. Clean out your locker and leave the premises. Security will escort you out. 2 guards appeared as if summoned by magic, their presence designed to add a final layer of humiliation to Nadia's defeat. The other staff members averted their eyes, ashamed of their own cowardice but unwilling to risk their own jobs. Solidarity was a luxury they couldn't afford in a world where rent came due every month regardless of principles. Genevieve smiled triumphantly, already savoring her victory and planning how she would tell this story at her next charity luncheon. The defeated waitress would become an amusing anecdote, a cautionary tale about knowing one's place in the natural order. As the security guards approached, Nadia looked directly into Victoria Sterling's cold grey eyes and saw something the billionaire's wife had missed completely. Not defeat, but calculation. Not submission, but strategy. This isn't over. Nadia said quietly, her words carrying a promise that made Genevieve's smile falter for just a heartbeat. The guards flanked her as she walked toward the exit, her head held high despite the whispers following in her wake. Behind her, she left a room full of people who thought they had just witnessed a destruction. They had no idea they had actually watched the first move in a game Genevieve Ashford didn't even realize she had entered. The evening rain drummed against the windows of Nadia's apartment as she sat across from her grandmother at their small kitchen table. Lorraine looked fragile in her faded pink robe, the chemotherapy having stolen 30 pounds from her once robust frame, but her eyes still held the fire that had raised a daughter to never back down from bullies. "Tell me what happened, baby," Lorraine said, reaching across the table to squeeze Nadia's hand with fingers that felt like bird bones wrapped in tissue paper. Nadia recounted the evening's events, watching her grandmother's expression shift from concern to pride to quiet fury. "That woman thinks she can break you because of the color of your skin and the uniform you wear," Lorraine said finally. "She doesn't know who she's dealing with, does she?" "No, Grandma, she doesn't." Nadia pulled out her laptop, the one that had carried her through 3 years at Georgetown School of Foreign Service before financial reality forced her into service jobs. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the muscle memory of someone who had once commanded spreadsheets and financial models instead of carrying plates and taking orders. "Genevieve Ashford thinks she knows everything about everyone, but she's about to learn that assumptions can be dangerous." The screen glowed as search engines revealed their secrets. Society pages, charity event photos, business registrations, and property records. Every digital breadcrumb that the Ashford family had left in their wake of wealth and privilege was about to be examined under a microscope. Information was power, and Nadia Collins had spent years learning how to weaponize data. The first hour of research painted a picture of typical old money excess. Country club memberships, political donations, and enough charity galas to fund a small nation's healthcare system. But as Nadia dug deeper, cracks began to appear in the Ashford Empire's pristine facade. The Ashford Foundation. Genevieve's signature charity, supposedly focused on empowering underprivileged youth through arts education. The foundation's annual gala raised millions, its board packed with celebrities and politicians eager to associate themselves with good works. But the public tax filings told a different story. "Grandma, look at this." Nadia turned the laptop so Lorraine could see the spreadsheet she was building. The foundation claims it raised $8.2 million last year. But look at where the money actually went. Her finger traced down the columns. Administrative costs. 73%. $6 million spent on administration for a foundation that employs exactly 2 part-time staff members. Lorraine leaned closer, squinting at the numbers. "Where's the rest going?" "Exactly." Nadia pulled up another document. The programs themselves serve 94 children. Total. That's over $65,000 per child in administrative costs, while the actual program expenses were less than $800,000. That doesn't make sense. It does if you're stealing. Nadia's fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing foundation expenditures with credit card records from a data breach that had exposed thousands of supposedly secure transactions 6 months earlier. She'd followed the breach for a class project on international money laundering, never imagining she'd use the skills personally. The pattern emerged like bones through flesh. Foundation funds purchasing designer clothes at Bergdorf Goodman. Spa treatments at exclusive Manhattan resorts. First-class flights to Paris, Milan, and the Maldives. All categorized as program development and community outreach. She's using charity money as her personal bank account. Nadia sat back, the scope of the fraud becoming clear. And she's been doing it for years. Her phone buzzed with a text from James Morrison, her former study partner from Georgetown who now worked as an investigative journalist for the Metropolitan Chronicle. "Saw the video from tonight. That was Genevieve Ashford, wasn't it? You okay?" Nadia typed back quickly. "I'm fine. Question for you. What do you know about the Ashford Foundation's actual operations?" The response came within minutes, followed by a phone call that would change everything. "Nadia, honey, you need to be extremely careful." James's voice was low and urgent. "I've been trying to get someone to go on record about that foundation for 2 years. The financial irregularities are obvious to anyone who looks, but Genevieve has destroyed every person who's tried to expose her. Lawsuits, career sabotage, personal attacks. She fights dirty and she fights to win. Tell me about the people she's destroyed. There was a pause on the line. Are you thinking about going after her? Because I need to be clear about what that means. 3 journalists have lost their jobs trying to investigate the Ashfords. 1 prosecutor was disbarred. Genevieve has an army of lawyers and unlimited funds to bury anyone who threatens her. What if I told you I have evidence? Real, documented evidence of fraud? Another pause, longer this time. What kind of evidence? The kind that shows exactly where the money goes. Credit card records, cross-referenced with foundation filings. A pattern of personal expenses categorized as charitable work. Years of it. Jesus. James's voice dropped to a whisper. If you really have that, we're not talking about a local scandal. We're talking federal charges. IRS investigation. The kind of thing that brings down entire organizations. Good. Nadia looked at her grandmother, who was nodding with fierce pride. Because I'm tired of people like her thinking they're untouchable. Okay. Okay, listen. You need to talk to Alexis Chen. She's a civil rights attorney who's been building cases against wealthy individuals who abuse their power. She's also got a personal reason to hate Genevieve Ashford. What kind of personal reason? 6 months ago, Genevieve destroyed her sister. Maya Chen was a social worker investigating child welfare violations at one of the foundation's partner organizations. She found evidence of funds being diverted, children being used as props for publicity photos while receiving no actual services. Genevieve buried her. False ethics complaints, manufactured witnesses, media leaks suggesting Maya was unstable and vindictive. Maya lost her license, her career, almost her life. She's still in therapy. Nadia felt her chest tighten with recognition. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about a pattern. A system. A woman who wielded her wealth and connections as weapons to crush anyone who dared to speak truth. Send me Alexis Chen's contact information. She said. I'll send it now. But Nadia, I'm serious. Once you start this, there's no going back. Genevieve will come after you with everything she has. Your history, your family, anything she can use to discredit you. Are you ready for that? Nadia looked at the spreadsheet on her screen, at the millions of dollars stolen from children who needed help, at the pattern of destruction left in Genevieve's wake. I'm ready. The next morning, Nadia woke to find her termination from the Belmont Yacht Club had been delivered via text message. Roger Whitmore couldn't even be bothered to fire her in person, choosing instead to hide behind corporate policy and legal liability. But as she deleted the message, another notification caught her attention. A news alert about Julian Ashford's tech company facing congressional scrutiny over data privacy violations. The stock had dropped 12% in after-hours trading. The timing felt significant. Billionaires rarely faced public accountability unless their empires were already crumbling from within. Nadia screenshot the article and added it to her growing file. Pieces of a puzzle beginning to form a recognizable shape. That afternoon, she made a decision that would either save her grandmother's life or destroy what remained of her own. Using the last of her emergency savings, Nadia purchased a tailored black suit from a consignment shop that specialized in designer labels. She made a reservation at Luminaire, the most exclusive restaurant in the city and Genevieve Ashford's favorite venue for what she called her power lunches. The transformation from unemployed server to polished professional was remarkable in its simplicity. Nadia stood before her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. The suit fit perfectly, the fabric quality obvious even to untrained eyes. She'd pulled her hair back into a sleek bun, applied makeup with more care than she usually bothered with. The woman looking back at her didn't look like someone who served food. She looked like someone who commanded boardrooms. You look like you're going to war. Lorraine said from the doorway, pride and concern mixing in her voice. I am. Nadia adjusted her collar. But this time, I'm fighting smart. That's my girl. Lorraine crossed the small bathroom and put her hands on Nadia's shoulders. Your grandfather always said that the best revenge is making them regret underestimating you. Luminaire occupied the ground floor of a converted brownstone in the financial district, its entrance marked by a discreet brass plaque and a doorman who evaluated potential customers with a glance. Nadia approached with the confidence of someone who belonged, and that confidence opened doors. Good afternoon, welcome to Luminaire. The hostess smiled with genuine warmth, a stark contrast to the dismissive glances Nadia had grown accustomed to in her server uniform. Do you have a reservation? Collins, table for one. Right this way, Miss Collins. The hostess led her through the dining room to a corner table with clear sight lines to the entire space. The same woman who had been invisible in service clothes now commanded respect in designer fabric. The transformation was instructive and infuriating in equal measure. Nadia ordered sparkling water and pretended to study the menu while her real attention focused on the entrance. She didn't have to wait long. Genevieve Ashford arrived like a conquering empress at 12:15, surrounded by her usual entourage of society women whose loyalty was purchased through proximity to power. They settled at their preferred table, always the same one, always positioned for maximum visibility, and began the familiar ritual of performing their importance for an audience of envious onlookers. Nadia activated the recording app on her phone, setting it on the table angled to capture audio while appearing to scroll through messages casually. What followed was better than she could have choreographed. The secret to foundation management is understanding that perception matters more than reality. Nadia pulled out her laptop and opened the files she'd compiled. Spreadsheets showing the discrepancy between claimed expenses and actual program costs. Credit card records cross-referenced with foundation filings. Photographs of Genevieve's social media posts from luxury vacations, all taken during times when the foundation claimed she was conducting program site visits. And then she played the recording from Luminaire. Alexis's expression remained neutral through the first few minutes, professional detachment maintaining control. But when Genevieve's voice filled the office admitting to congressional bribery, something shifted. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes went hard. When the recording ended, silence filled the office like water filling a well. Miss Collins. Alexis said finally. What you've brought me today is incredibly dangerous. Before we proceed, I need you to understand exactly what you're stepping into. She pulled up a file on her computer, displaying a list of names that made Nadia's breath catch. 15 people. Journalists, former employees, even a retired prosecutor. All of them tried to expose Genevieve Ashford. All of them had their lives systematically destroyed. Alexis clicked through the files, each one a catalogue of ruin. She doesn't just fight back. She dismantles lives. She'll investigate your history, find every mistake you've ever made, and turn them into weapons. She'll target your grandmother, question her medical care, suggest she's being exploited by an ungrateful granddaughter. James told me about your sister. Nadia said quietly. I know what Genevieve does to people who threaten her. Then why are you here? Because someone has to stop her. Nadia leaned forward. I've already lost my job. She's already threatened to ruin my life. The question isn't whether I'm willing to take risks. It's whether I'm going to let her get away with crimes that would put ordinary people in prison for decades. Alexis studied her for a long moment. My sister Maya was a social worker. One of the best. She found evidence that children were being exploited by one of the Foundation's partner organizations. Used as props for publicity photos while receiving minimal actual services. When she tried to report it, Genevieve destroyed her. Her voice remained level, but rage burned beneath every word. False ethics complaints. Manufactured witnesses claiming Maya had falsified reports. Media leaks suggesting she was unstable, vindictive, pursuing a personal vendetta. Maya lost her license. Lost her career. She attempted suicide 6 months ago. She's still in therapy, still trying to rebuild from the devastation. I'm sorry. I don't want your sympathy. Alexis's voice sharpened. I want your certainty. Because once we start this, there's no going back. Genevieve will come after you with everything she has. Your life will be investigated, dissected, weaponized. Are you absolutely certain you're ready for that war? Nadia thought about her grandmother struggling for breath after each dialysis treatment. Thought about the mounting medical bills, the job prospects evaporating under Genevieve's influence. Thought about Maya Chen and the 14 others whose lives had been destroyed. Thought about all the future victims who would suffer if someone didn't stop this. I'm certain. Alexis nodded slowly, decision made. Then let's bring her down. For the next 72 hours, Alexis Chen's office became a war room. Documents covered every surface, laptops glowed with spreadsheets and legal databases, and coffee cups multiplied like evidence of their obsession. Nadia worked with the focused intensity of someone who'd found purpose in rage, her Georgetown training finally deployed for something that mattered. We need to establish pattern and intent. Alexis said, pacing between whiteboards covered in timeline notations. One instance of fraud could be explained away as accounting error. But years of systematic theft, that's a different story. Nadia pulled up another spreadsheet, this one tracking foundation expenses over 5 years. Look at this. Every year, administrative costs increase while program services decrease. 2018, administrative was 62%. Last year, 73%. The trend is unmistakable. And the personal expenses disguised as program costs? Alexis leaned over her shoulder. I've cross-referenced 347 transactions. Designer clothes purchased during supposed program site visits. Luxury hotels billed as community outreach. First-class flights to European cities that have no connection to any foundation activities. Nadia clicked through the evidence. She's not even trying to hide it. She thinks she's untouchable. She has been untouchable. Alexis's voice carried bitter recognition. For 15 years, she's operated with complete impunity. But that recording from Luminaire, that's the game changer. Admitting to congressional bribery in her own words, that brings in federal jurisdiction. She pulled up another file. I've been coordinating with Special Agent Marcus Williams from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They've been trying to build a case against Julian Ashford's company for months. Data privacy violations, illegal user tracking, selling personal information to foreign entities. But the congressional investigation mysteriously lost funding and key personnel were reassigned. Genevieve's interference. Nadia said. Exactly. Your recording provides proof of criminal obstruction. That transforms a regulatory issue into federal conspiracy charges. The strategy took shape like a building rising from blueprints. They would file with the FBI and IRS simultaneously. The foundation fraud would trigger state and federal investigations. The congressional bribery would bring additional federal charges. And most importantly, they would leak everything to the media before Genevieve could control the narrative. James Morrison's byline at the Metropolitan Chronicle would carry the initial story. But Alexis had cultivated relationships with journalists at 6 other major outlets, ensuring saturation coverage that couldn't be suppressed or spun. We file in 3 days. Alexis marked the date on her calendar. That gives us time to prepare redundant backups, secure locations for evidence storage, and coordinate with federal authorities. Once we pull this trigger, everything happens fast. Nadia felt the weight of what they were building. Not just a legal case, but a reckoning. Years of stolen money, destroyed lives, and unchecked power finally facing consequences. What about the victims? She asked. The 15 people Genevieve destroyed. Can we bring them into this? Some of them. Alexis pulled up another file. 3 are willing to testify if we can guarantee protection from retaliation. The others are too traumatized or too afraid. Maya still has nightmares about what Genevieve did to her. But if we win, if we actually take her down, maybe they'll find some peace. The second day of preparation brought unexpected reinforcement. Agent Marcus Williams arrived at the office with 2 other federal investigators, their presence transforming the space into an official operation. Miss Collins. Williams extended his hand, his grip firm and evaluating. I've reviewed your evidence. This is some of the most comprehensive financial analysis I've seen from a civilian. Where did you learn these skills? Georgetown School of Foreign Service. I specialized in international financial crimes investigation before personal circumstances required a career change. Williams exchanged glances with Alexis. You were working as a server at the Belmont Yacht Club? The question carried no judgment, only curiosity. My grandmother's medical bills required immediate income. Dialysis 3 times a week at $450 per session. The math doesn't care about degrees or career aspirations. Williams nodded slowly. The math rarely does. But in this case, your financial expertise combined with direct contact with Genevieve Ashford created the perfect storm. She never suspected the woman serving her drinks was capable of dismantling her empire. He opened his briefcase, pulling out additional documentation. We've been investigating Julian Ashford's tech company for 8 months. Congressional oversight was our best avenue until funding mysteriously dried up and key committee members suddenly lost interest. Your recording explains why. Campaign contributions strategically deployed to obstruct a federal investigation, that's conspiracy and bribery at the highest levels. Can you prove the money trail? Nadia asked. Now we can. Williams smiled, the expression carrying years of frustrated investigation finally finding resolution. Your evidence gave us probable cause for warrants we couldn't get before. We've spent the last 48 hours tracing campaign contributions from Ashford family accounts. The pattern matches exactly what Genevieve described on your recording. She literally confessed to crimes we couldn't prove. The pieces were falling into place with the inevitability of physics. Evidence, testimony, federal jurisdiction, and media exposure. Everything aligned for maximum impact. But on the third day, 72 hours before they planned to file, Nadia's phone rang at 3 in the morning. The hospital. Requesting immediate contact about Lorraine Collins. Miss Collins, this is Dr. Martinez from Metropolitan General. Your grandmother experienced complications during routine dialysis this evening. We need you to come in immediately. The words blurred together as Nadia dressed in the dark, her hands shaking as she pulled on clothes. Alexis's words echoed in her mind. Genevieve will target your grandmother, question her medical care. But this couldn't be Genevieve's doing. This was just the cruel randomness of a body failing, of a disease that didn't care about timing or justice or anything except its own destructive logic. The hospital corridor smelled of disinfectant and desperation, a familiar combination that had haunted Nadia's nights for months. Dr. Martinez met her outside the ICU, his expression carefully neutral in the way doctors learn to deliver bad news without breaking down. Your grandmother developed a severe infection during tonight's dialysis session. Her immune system is compromised from the ongoing treatment, and the infection has spread to her bloodstream. We're looking at sepsis if we don't intervene immediately. What kind of intervention? Nadia's voice sounded distant to her own ears. We're recommending emergency surgery to replace her dialysis port and aggressive antibiotic therapy. The infection protocol we need to use is relatively new, still considered experimental by Medicare standards. He handed her a cost estimate that made the floor tilt beneath her feet. The total cost including surgery, medications, and intensive care monitoring will run approximately $38,000. Your grandmother's Medicare will cover about 40%, leaving you responsible for the remaining $23,000. The number sat in her chest like a stone. $23,000 she didn't have. Couldn't borrow. Couldn't earn in time to save her grandmother's life. How long do I have to decide? We need to proceed within 48 hours. The infection is aggressive. Without intervention, her immune system won't be able to fight it off. Nadia sat in the hospital corridor, clutching the estimate while fluorescent lights hummed their indifferent song. Inside the ICU, machines beeped out the rhythm of her grandmother's borrowed time. Outside, the case against Genevieve Ashford sat ready to file, 3 days from destroying the woman who'd tried to destroy her. And Nadia had exactly $0 to save the person she loved most in the world. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I understand your grandmother is facing a health crisis. These situations can be so stressful, especially when financial constraints limit options. Perhaps we could discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement that would ensure she receives the care she needs. Meet me at Luminaire tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Leave your lawyer and your recordings at home. Let's talk about what really matters. Family. The message was unsigned, but Nadia didn't need a signature to know who'd sent it. Genevieve Ashford had somehow learned about Lorraine's hospitalization and was offering exactly what Nadia needed most. Financial salvation in exchange for silence. A second message followed. I'm prepared to cover all medical expenses, current and ongoing. Your grandmother will receive the best care available. All I ask in return is your cooperation in resolving our recent misunderstanding. Surely we can be reasonable adults about this. Nadia stared at the screen, watching the cursor blink like a countdown to choice. Justice or survival? Principle or pragmatism? The war against corruption or her grandmother's life? She called Alexis at 3:45 in the morning. She took the bait. Nadia's voice was hollow. Lorraine's in the ICU. Genevieve somehow found out and she's offering to pay for everything if I destroy the evidence and disappear. Silence on the line, then Alexis's voice, fully alert despite the hour. What did you tell her? I didn't. I wanted to talk to you first. More silence, heavy with implications. Nadia, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What I'm about to say is going to sound cruel, but I need you to hear it. If you take Genevieve's offer, your grandmother lives and Genevieve wins. She continues stealing from charities, destroying anyone who threatens her, corrupting officials, and operating above the law. If you refuse and continue the case, there's no guarantee we win, and without that money, Lorraine might not survive. I know. Nadia's voice cracked. I know the math. The math isn't what I'm asking about. I'm asking what your grandmother would want you to do. Not what would save her life. What would honor the woman she is. Nadia closed her eyes, seeing Lorraine in her pink bathrobe, frail but fierce. Dignity can't be bought or sold. Her grandmother's voice, clear as if she were sitting beside her. Your grandfather faced down worse than this and never bowed. She would tell me to fight. Nadia opened her eyes. She would tell me that saving her life by selling my soul would kill her anyway, just slower. Alexis's voice softened. Then we set the trap. You meet Genevieve like she asked. You wear a wire. FBI agent's position throughout the restaurant. She makes her offer on record, and we add witness tampering to the list of charges. She's not stupid. She'll suspect a trap. No. Alexis's voice hardened. She won't. Because her ego won't allow her to imagine you'd choose principle over your grandmother's life. She's counting on your love, your desperation, your basic human decency to make you cave. She can't conceive of someone who'd sacrifice everything for justice because she's never sacrificed anything for anyone. Nadia looked through the ICU window at her grandmother, machines breathing for her, tubes delivering medications that bought hours instead of years. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it. But I need something first." "Name it." "I need you to set up a fundraiser. Anonymous, through the legal clinic or wherever you can. 23,000 for Lorraine's treatment. Because I'm betting everything on us winning, but I need a backup plan that doesn't involve selling out to the woman we're trying to destroy. Consider it done. I'll have it live within 6 hours." Nadia spent the next day at her grandmother's bedside, holding her hand while Lorraine drifted in and out of consciousness. During a moment of clarity, the older woman's eyes focused on her granddaughter's face. "Why do you look like you're carrying the world, baby girl?" Lorraine's voice was weak but present. "Because I'm making a choice that might cost me everything." Nadia squeezed her hand gently. "And I need you to tell me I'm doing the right thing. Tell me the choice." Genevieve Ashford offered to pay for all your medical treatment. Everything. Current bills and ongoing care. In exchange for me dropping the case against her and keeping quiet about her crimes. Lorraine's expression didn't change, but her grip on Nadia's hand tightened with surprising strength. "And what did you tell her?" "I'm meeting her tomorrow. But not to accept. To trap her. The FBI is going to record her bribing me to destroy evidence. It'll add more charges to her case." "Good." Lorraine's smile was fierce despite her weakness. "That's my granddaughter. Grandma, if I do this, if I refuse her money, there's a chance we can't afford your treatment. The fundraiser might not reach the goal in time. I might lose you because I chose justice over your life. Baby, look at me." Lorraine waited until Nadia met her eyes. "I am 73 years old. I have lived a long life, raised a beautiful daughter who gave me a brilliant granddaughter. I have loved and been loved. If I die tomorrow, I die complete." Tears streamed down Nadia's face. "But if you sell your integrity to keep me breathing a few more months, if you let that evil woman win because you're afraid of losing me, then I die incomplete. Because I'll know I failed to teach you the most important lesson. Some things matter more than survival. I don't want to lose you. You won't lose me, baby. I'll be right here." Lorraine pressed Nadia's hand to her chest. "Beating in your heart every time you stand up to someone who thinks power makes them untouchable. Living in your courage every time you choose what's right over what's easy. You carry me forward by being the woman I raised you to be." The next morning, Nadia woke in the hospital chair to find Alexis standing in the doorway with Agent Williams and a technical specialist carrying equipment. "We need to wire you up before the meeting," Alexis said quietly. "Are you ready for this?" Nadia looked at her grandmother, still sleeping with machines keeping rhythm. "I'm ready." The wire was smaller than she'd expected, barely larger than a button, attached to the inside of her suit jacket with adhesive that the tech specialist promised would hold through anything short of swimming. "The recording quality is excellent," he explained. "We'll have agents positioned at 3 tables in the restaurant, all within visual range. The moment she makes an explicit offer, we move in." "What if she doesn't make it explicit?" Nadia asked. "What if she's careful with her language?" "She won't be," Williams said with the confidence of someone who'd seen this play out before. "People like Genevieve Ashford are used to speaking plainly because they've never faced consequences. She'll make the offer clear because she can't imagine a world where it would be used against her." Nadia arrived at Luminaire at 11:50, 10 minutes early to settle her nerves. The hostess recognized her from her previous visit, greeting her with the same warm professionalism that came from seeing expensive clothes instead of a person. "Miss Collins, welcome back. Mrs. Ashford has arranged for the private dining room. Right this way." The private dining room was smaller than the main restaurant, intimate in a way designed for sensitive conversations. Cream silk drapes, soft lighting, a single table set for two. Genevieve was already seated, a leather folder resting beside her water glass. "Thank you for coming, Nadia." The use of her first name was deliberate, an assertion of familiarity meant to establish a dynamic where they were equals having a reasonable discussion. "Please, sit. I took the liberty of ordering for both of us. The halibut here is exceptional." Nadia remained standing, her hands folded in front of her with composure that came from knowing federal agents were listening to every word. "I'm not here for lunch, Mrs. Ashford." "No, I suppose you're not." Genevieve's smile was thin. "You're here because you're a smart young woman who understands that idealism is a luxury your grandmother can't afford." She slid the folder across the table with manicured fingers that had never scrubbed floors or counted pennies. "Inside you'll find a certified check for $50,000. More than enough for her immediate care and several months of treatment beyond that. All I require in return is your silence. Destroy whatever recordings you've made, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we can both move forward with our lives." Nadia could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, steady despite the fear flooding her system. Through the window in the door, she could see Alexis at a nearby table, pretending to study a menu. "You get to save your grandmother. I get to avoid a tedious legal battle that would ultimately lead nowhere. Everyone wins." Genevieve's confidence was absolute, built on a lifetime of watching money solve every inconvenient problem. "Except the children your foundation pretends to help." Nadia's voice was quiet but carried clearly in the intimate space. "Except the donors who believe their money is making a difference. Except every person you've destroyed for threatening to expose your corruption." Genevieve's expression hardened. "Spare me the moral superiority. You think you're the first person to try to take me down? You're not even in the top 10. They all thought they had evidence, thought they had righteousness on their side." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper sharp as broken glass. "They were all wrong. And they all paid the price for overestimating their importance. Jobs lost, reputations destroyed, careers ended. I have resources you can't imagine and connections that reach everywhere. You're a college dropout working as a server. Who do you think people will believe? You're right about one thing," Nadia said, finally sitting down across from the billionaire's wife. "I'm not the first person you've destroyed." She paused, holding Genevieve's gaze. "But I am the last." The door to the private dining room opened. Alexis Chen entered first, her heels clicking against marble. Behind her came FBI Special Agent Marcus Williams, his badge gleaming under the soft lighting. 3 federal investigators followed, carrying boxes of documentation. Then James Morrison with a photographer, cameras flashing as they captured Genevieve's face draining of color. "Genevieve Ashford, you are under investigation for charitable fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to obstruct federal proceedings, and as of approximately 2 minutes ago, witness tampering." Williams's voice carried the flat authority of someone who delivered this speech many times. "The non-disclosure agreement you just offered Miss Collins in exchange for destroying evidence constitutes obstruction of justice. That brings our total to 17 distinct federal violations. This is absurd." Genevieve's voice rose, but the foundation of her confidence was already crumbling. "I was simply trying to help a former employee in crisis. There is no crime in generosity. There is when it's offered as payment for destroying evidence in a federal investigation." Alexis's smile carried years of pent-up vindication. The recordings Miss Collins provided were already submitted to federal authorities 48 hours ago. "This meeting was orchestrated specifically to document your witness tampering, which carries its own prison sentence." The leather folder with its check sat on the table between them, evidence of attempted bribery recorded by 3 separate cameras Alexis had arranged with Luminaire's management. The same restaurant management who'd been quietly collecting their own evidence of Genevieve's abusive behavior toward staff for years. If you like this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories like this.